We're getting some new revelations today about what the Canadian government knew about the risk of Afghan detainees, the risk of torture for Afghan detainees. A Canadian diplomat with extensive experience in Afghanistan says she warned officials about the problem 4.5 years ago, but no one paid much attention back then. Margot McDermott is in Ottawa, and let's start, Margot, with this diplomat. Who is she, and what exactly has she had to say this time?
Heather, the diplomat is Eileen Oleksiuk, and she was the most senior Canadian diplomat in Afghanistan. She got there in 2002 and was second in command in the embassy in Kabul. And by the time she left in 2005, she was the most experienced diplomat in Afghanistan for Canada. Now, she says that she warned the Liberal government back in 2005 that the deal to transfer detainees, people taken prisoner by Canadian troops, to transfer them to Afghan jails wasn't enough to protect those people from being tortured. She says that she actually wrote 3 reports on human rights in Afghanistan and laid out the fact that torture was going on in the Afghan jails. In fact, it was common knowledge that it was going on. But she says that the Liberal government of Paul Martin ignored her. Oleksiuk says she also suggested they set up a system that Canadian authorities track people who've been transferred to these jails to make sure that they're not mistreated. Here's a little bit more from an interview that she did with CBC Radio.
But at least we should set up some kind of a pattern of visits so that, and we should know the fellows that we've transferred over and ask to see those fellows or ask to see some record that they'd been released.
So there's a little bit of the interview she gave, as you say, Margot, to CBC Radio. She's talking about that she's made her claims, going back to a previous government now. So how does what she's saying fit into the big picture for this story in Afghanistan?
Heather, what this really does is it simply fills in more of the pieces of this murky puzzle about who knew what when. Did the Canadian government know that prisoners handed over to Afghan authorities could be tortured? It's an ongoing question. It's one that has sparked an ongoing issue in the House of Commons. And of course, the answer is if Canada did know that this could potentially happen and was happening, then we could be found guilty of war crimes. That's really the bottom of this. So Oleksiuk's story shows that, in fact, that the Canadian government may, in fact, have known way back in 2005 that torture was a problem, and that it may have, in fact, been warned several times by its own diplomats. Also, CBC has reported earlier this week that the Conservative government that came into power in 2006, in March 2007, it was already formulating its public relations answer to allegations of torture. And this is before the media actually started reporting on the fact that detainees were being tortured in Afghan jails. So it shows that perhaps the government knew that this was going on, and that it was formulating a plan to deal with the issue once it became public. So again, Oleksiuk's story really becomes part of this puzzle that is emerging. And of course, there are ongoing questions in the House of Commons every day still about what did the government know, and will it release documents publicly that shows what it knew and when it knew it. So just more part of the puzzle.
All right. Margot, thank you very much for that this morning. Still